6:01 PM. This is a meeting of the Cohasset Select Board at the Senior Center at 91 Sawyer Street. I would like to do a roll call vote, please.
Chris What's here?
Mr. Creighton.
Jack Creighton here.
Paul Grady present.
Ellen Mar present. Jean Haley Dipple present. Okay, all are invited to join in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Is there any public comments? Great. We are 1 minute ahead of schedule, and so the next agenda item we have is an electrical aggregation update, discussion, and vote. Please feel free to come up and join us.
Or should we say?
Why don't, if you both want to come up, yeah, thank you, Justin, just because it's easier for people to hear.
Sure. Okay, thanks for letting us be on the agenda at the last minute here. There have been two recent developments that require your attention. That could seriously affect the Cohasset electricity program. One of them is a bill that's before the State House. It's House number 3852. And the second item is a response to the Department of Public Utilities suggested guidelines for new guidelines for aggregation programs. So both of these items have associated with them a sign-on letter of comments. So we're hoping that Cohasset can join with many other communities in signing these letters in support of both the legislation and in support of the DPU comments to about the DPU guidelines, the DPU. So the purpose of these two proposals, both the stuff from the DPU and the new legislation, is to address a serious problem that the DPU has had over the last several years in reviewing and approving aggregation programs. There are 15 towns in Massachusetts that have had plans languishing before the DPU for more than 3 years without any action. Now, in our case in Cohasset, it was only after Chris Senior and the officers of half a dozen other towns wrote letters to the DPU petitioning them to, shake a leg and get a move on. And the intervention of our state representative, Joan Moschino, and our state senator, Patrick O'Connor, that things finally shook loose. Maybe even a noisy demonstration of activists at the a large crowd of activists at the DPU headquarters had some effect too. But anyways, it took a lot effort, more than 2.5 years to get our plan approved. Well, something has to be done. So the DPU has new commissioners now, and they're proposing one way to address the problem. But there are serious issues with what they're proposing. And also there's this bill before the State House. And I think the bill before the State House would essentially solve all the problems. So this bill, House 3852, as I said, it's gone through several iterations, and this is the latest one. It was created by a joint working group, a bunch of towns that are experiencing aggregations, and all the active consultants in Massachusetts, including our own Good Energy, and the Cape Light Compact, which has like 18 towns or so in it, and the Green Energy Consumers Alliance, plus the legislators that have been intimately involved are Rep. Vitolo, who introduced the bill into the House, and Senator Lewis. So they've all worked to put this together. It's a little bit lengthy bill, so I won't have the time in 12 minutes to read it to you, but I just want to talk about the two most important aspects of the bill. The first is that one problem that the DPU has had is that over the years, it's decided that it has to micromanage these programs down to the the small details each town has to decide on with their own programs. Well, this bill will relieve the DPU of micromanaging. It will say DPU, it'll be your responsibility to make certain that the towns are going to follow the structural requirements of the law and their aggregation plans. But the details of the plan, for instance, the options that are offered, the amount of renewable energy in those various options, the term of the contract, details like that will be left up to local rule for individual towns to decide what they want to do. And DPU will not be required to review these, but only review the structural aspects of the plan. So that'll relieve, hopefully that'll help break loose the logjam a bit. And then the second biggie I want to mention, it's in the bill, is that the DPU would, under the bill, have 90 days to review the plans. And if after 90 days they had not acted, then the plan would be approved by default. Of course, that wouldn't relieve individual towns of their responsibility to keep the structural details as according to law. It just means that that will help move things along, certainly. So there are many other improvements to the bill, but we think that these are two of the most important. So now Debbie is going to discuss the DPU guidelines and the letter of comments to the DPU in response to that.
So basically, the header is that, DPU's new guidelines and template plan. So what the DPU had done is to come up with a template that would allow them to, sort of quickly approve aggregation plans. But then their guidance was just so onerous. It's so onerous. So as the first line item here is numerous areas of potential conflict between the guidelines and the template. So it makes it really difficult to go forward. There's several problems, but one of them is a restricted launch window, which means that a town has to specify its launch date. And if it misses that, it has to wait for 6 months, which means that it can lose a window of getting some great rates. So that's a real problem. The third one, which I think is probably one of our most concerning issues, is that it only allows 2 program options. Now, right now we have 3, and there are towns that want to have specific ones where they might have a aggregation program for a certain segment of people in town. I mean, there's a lot of ways that, different towns are doing this, and this would restrict it to just the 2. And one of them would have to have the minimum renewable energy. So it's like the base rate. I mean, it's, and then the last one is the no flexibility for towns to adjust or renew plans without lengthy amendment process. We understand when we are done with this term, that we're going to actually, the way it stands now, you have to sort of go back and start over. And I don't actually know what happens in the interim while, I think we revert back to National Grid. So we're trying to make this, make this much more efficient. And this is the time, because there are a lot of towns that are up for renewal. They're waiting. There's a lot of towns that have been discouraged from going for this. So this is kind of the time.
So we should mention that already, even though the comments letter has only been available for about a week, there are still 70 towns in Massachusetts that have already signed on in support of the bill. So it's not like, we'll be blazing any new ground here and supporting this. And also on the comments of DPU, that has pretty wide support. The the Cape, Cape Compact, has signed on to it, which consists of 21 towns in itself. And, as well as all the municipal aggregation consultants. So we're hoping that you'll agree to add Cohasset's name to the list. The reason that we were rushed to get before you is that the deadline for the comments is Friday at noon. They have to be in the DPU's docket by noon on Friday. And the bill, there's already been one hearing in the bill. That was last week in the Senate committee. I was there. There were 5 or 6 people who spoke on the bill, and everyone who spoke for it, spoke about the bill was in support of it. There was no opposition at all. And next week on the 12th is going to be the House hearing. Joe Moschino, by the way, is on that committee, the TUE, Telecommunications, Utilities and Energy Committee. So that's next week. And if we're going to sign as a community, we need to do that by next week for the comments on the bill in the legislature.
And the letters are in your packet.
Yes, the letters, the individual letters are in your packet. They're a little lengthy. We couldn't read them now, but I hope that we summarize them well enough that you can sign up.
We have time to ask that question.
Remember? Want to do it anyway? Okay, Debbie and I have debating how best that the select board could proceed here. And one thing that we might suggest is that you simply give our town manager, Chris Senior, the authority to review and sign on behalf of the town, if you wish, because these won't be the only time that these sorts of letters or comments will need to make to the DPU. There will be some others coming also, and it might be impractical for us to get before you for review every single time. So we might suggest that would be a good approach.
One thing that they say is that, that to kind of remind people is that, all of the people, they're basically nonprofits and working for the good of the town. The people like Good Energy, and I mean, they're not, but
Green Energy Consumers Alliance, certainly.
yeah,
and
so basically this is, they are looking out for the town's best interests.
Well, thank you very much for the presentation. I want to survey the board to see if there's any questions or comments.
Are these mandatory sign-ins?
what
If we adopted this, would the town have to be forced with a choice if I didn't want to?
well, the town has we do have a Cohasset community electricity program now.
No, my question is because if you didn't decide, you were drawn into it anyways, like for instance.
Oh, yes, it's an opt-out program. So you're notified by mail. If you wish to join the program, you don't do anything, you'll be automatically enrolled. If you
So
rather
that's the part
not,
that's the part
you
I'm not-
return
that's the
a
part I'm not a
postcard.
fan.
I'm sorry.
That's the part I'm not a fan of.
Well, that was part of the original Utility Restructuring Act in 1997. It was the original structure of the irrigation program. So there's nothing can be
No, I understand.
changed about that. That's part of the state program. But if you didn't notice the letter, didn't notice all the public hearings and other outreach we tried, and you got enrolled in the program and you decided that you didn't like the idea, you just make a phone call and cancel.
Who do you call?
It's on the Cohasset electricity or electricity.cohassetma.com,
It's actually on it.
or it's on the town
our-
website.
Yeah.
On the
town
town's.
The one thing we want to say is, when people get electricity, they're automatically normally opted into National Grid. So the town is trying to get better rates.
Yeah.
And lots of discussion goes on to make sure that that they're better.
Yeah, one
So-
thing to keep in mind is if you're not just the default customer in National Grid on their default program, if you've gone to the trouble of investigating alternative third-party contracts for electricity supply, and you have a third-party contract, then you're not opted in. You wouldn't be automatically enrolled. You'd have to actually call and say, I'm gonna drop my third-party contract and I'd like to join the Cohasset program.
Thank you for that.
So it's only those that have the default
That's good.
National Grid.
Thanks so much.
Right. Well, I think I appreciate your presentation, and the concise presentation, but substantive. I think this sounds like a good idea. I think DPU has struggled, and, I think some enhancements are probably a positive thing for our communities. So I would support it, but I'm not sure if others have. thought.
Just noting, I'm being very quiet here. I need to sit this one out because of conflict with my primary employer. But nothing you've said strikes me as a problem or controversial or raises any significant concerns.
Would you like to say anything, Jack, or?
I'm normally in support of all of this, but I really don't quite understand all the details. I haven't really had a chance to read it in depth, and that's, my issue. And I understand there's a deadline for Friday, and here it is Tuesday, and it's the first time we've had a chance to discuss that. That's my issue. I'm generally not comfortable signing and agreeing to things that, while I may agree in principle, I don't know the details. My concern.
We did try to get here earlier. And
Well,
and anyway, so we're doing the best we can.
I think your summarized materials kind of laid it out pretty well, and I would be in favor of your suggestion to have us authorize the town manager to sign on behalf of the board because of the deadlines of Friday the 6th and the following week on the 12th.
Would you like to make a motion?
I'd like to make a motion to authorize Chris Senior to sign the letters and the comments due to the Honorable Jeffrey Roy and Michael J. Barrett. Is that correct?
Mhm.
And then also the DPU on behalf of the Cohasset Select Board.
If I could ask to clarify on this specific issue or more broadly as the issue evolves.
I would say on these two issues that we're aware of. I would not want other things to come up and not have us, have a position on them. And have Chris sign on our behalf, thinking we're okay with it. I think we should always review whatever we're asking the town manager to sign on our behalf. So it would just be these two things.
So there's a motion. Is there a second? I would second. Okay, so we have a motion on the table. All those in favor, please vote aye.
Aye.
Abstain.
All those opposed?
nay, only because I haven't had a chance to really look into it and understand that, because as you know, I've supported these things in the past, but I have really no idea.
So Betsy, you're so far away. Mr. Plex is abstained. You have 3 ayes, and Mr. Creighton is a no.
Thank you for clarifying. I just want to make sure people still have a choice. That's all.
Sure. Understand.
I can confirm that getting on or off is a very simple process.
Thank you for your work.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Thank you very much.
So, answer Jack's concern, next time you have to schedule this for an hour, right? 12 minutes.
It would have been a lot easier if I'd have more in depth much earlier.
Yeah.
We have a lot on our plate, and we're dealing with a very extensive. So, and this is a pretty important extensive proposal in public policy.
Hey, 7:21. We are now at Town hall building update. So. Here we, Mr. Senior, would you like to provide us with the update you have?
So last week, the board said, hey, can you mock up a revenue plan? That shows kind of what the rental income might be, what some of the expenses might be. And then this one first, part of that, which Michelle prepared, but then, before we did talk about it. These are the rents are, we just modeled them off what exists in other places in the area. That's the low end, this is the lower end of the model. It could obviously would be higher if you did more workforce out there. It just also shows the square footage. It modeled the 12% management fee just at a higher end, just for the use of it. 20% expenses seems to be what the recommendation is. And expect to see even a 5% vacancy rate, but that could be higher. That's just for these purposes. You can see the annual rent total. And then you're netting out the management fee, the miscellaneous expenses, and the vacancy rate. And the net amount is an estimated annual revenue of $345,000. And then net of $217. And when I say net, we still have insurance. It's not an insurance quote in here for the building. We're gonna have the elevator inspections, stuff like, and some of that might be in the miscellaneous expenses, but I think, you know, we have to, I would be more comfortable with the real insurance, but which we're working on getting something. So that kind of gives a rough idea as where we're starting out. I did confirm with Carolyn Murray today, our town council, that the fund that we're talking about is chapter 40, section 3. And it allows you to put rent income for the upkeep of the facility into a fund. And use it for the facility.
On that point with, chapter 40, section 3, would we need to create a revolving fund through the warrant? Through
No,
warrant
it has to be done by action of,
the select board?
Yeah.
Okay, okay,
whichever board has authority over the buildings. So, and that
okay,
would be the select.
okay. I think that's a very helpful, important piece of information, because people are concerned about where does this money go, and so this is a statutory mechanism to maintain. Would all of the money need to put in there, or could it be partial?
It doesn't have to be a home.
Okay,
That's not, I think the recommendation will be at the beginning to put all of it in there, just to start building up some money and figuring out where this goes, because, you know, the beginning is gonna be the most uncertain time. You have to get tenants in, you know. This could probably be a little more expensive early on. You have to run the lotteries. You have to, so I think there's always punch list stuff which should be taken care of by the contractor. There's always some stuff and then nothing. And we're also gonna have to get you know, get some. We have to get a map. So some of that could also change. But this is a kind of first cut mock up, but I think it gives it.
We have any guesstimates? I mean, it's impossible to get on operating costs. What are they-
Well, the town hall, Michelle and I were talking about that earlier today. I'm sorry, I don't have that number. We were actually working on it today. It's about $100,000 a year,
Yeah.
roughly, to operate the building. That's utilities, repairs, that kind of stuff. The contracts, you know, water, it's all the utilities. We have contracts for the, you know, the elevator and the sprinkler systems and stuff like that. You have to have these contracts. And it's just repairs. There's more repairs than normal in a building like that. And there's some weird quirky stuff in there too. You know, I like fuses and stuff, right? I don't even know what this costs. But you're gonna replace something. And then I stick with a new, and all of the lights in that building are not fully, I mean, we have a lot of, you know, the old fluorescent things that in some areas. The building has been fully renovated. A new structure would have LED lighting and stuff, which should theoretically last a long time, so you probably wouldn't have to replace bulbs quite so frequently. That's roughly. That doesn't include insurance, that's just what's in the facilities. It doesn't include personnel, we don't allocate people.
No, my basic physical structure.
I
cost.
can pay the numbers.
I assume the building was already configured for individual apartments to have their own utility.
Yes, they're all gonna, all the units are set up for independent.
The one thing that I think we as a board are gonna have to address, and I don't think we can figure this out tonight, is when you see a big chunk of money, you're going to find all kinds of requests to use that money for various purposes. And I suspect that we're gonna have people who, when they're discussing this, are gonna be concerned about, is that money really gonna be sequestered? Or does the board even really wanna put a hard and fast sequester on these extra funds to make sure that they are there in a healthy reserve fund? And maybe you say the money goes in there until we hit a predetermined amount, and then we keep that fund at that amount. In many ways, we can solve that, but I think as a board, we need to be thinking of how do we explain that that money is sequestered and not scattered around in various other needs, because we're always going to have needs around.
I have a question. So I know for in the school budgeting process, revolving funds, are created because of a revenue stream in, okay? It's not from the operational budget. And they can only be used for which that fund was set up. Okay, so athletic revolving, you can't paint classrooms with it. It has to go towards athletic. Would a revolving fund from the revenue stream from the apartments be as limited to that building?
Well, the answer is yes. So revenues in the revolving fund would have to stay within the building. Now, I think you can stay within the four corners of the building entirely, not just the upstairs units.
Right.
The roof and the walls and the elevator.
Okay.
Support everything. That said, you don't have to, I don't believe, and I talked to Council, I did read the law, and that's typical, it's convoluted and not simple, but it does say, you don't have to put it all, it doesn't say you have to put it on. But what you do build in has to stay for those purposes.
Would we be able to change the amount that goes in?
Yeah, I believe,
over time?
the short answer is I believe the answer is yes. Remember, the rents could change too, remember, so, and there's nothing in the law that says you have to, once you're in, you have to be locked.
How is rent revenue that doesn't go into this revolving fund treated?
Let me answer that generous, any non-specified revenue that comes into the town goes into the general fund, just general. It would come in as miscellaneous revenue, more of their revenue, but it would just go into the general. Revolving funds are targeted revenues, otherwise, we have a number for a lot of purposes. You're paying for a food inspection that goes to revolving. Senior programs that was also established, so they're self-sustained, the recreation fund in this version. But otherwise, the funds would just come into the general. And then if there's extra at the end of the year, they're going to the free cash account.
Yeah, I was just reading section 3 of the general law, and it says any remaining funds, any balance in the account. Will be paid to the general fund.
And there's another call, unless the section is adopted, you can extend the fund over years. A lot of funds do close out at the end of the year, and then go back to the general fund. You can though set these up, and again, it just takes an extra bit of work. That they last year. Yeah, I did see that change.
My thought on that, I think it would be prudent to let the fund grow, so everything we're planning, we're trying to accomplish, shows the people that what we're saying is going to come to pass, that they'll be self-sustaining. It's operating, maybe knock on wood, it's operating at a plus. Before even touching it down, putting it in, building it up until the building is full. How that operates and figure that out.
I agree, there's a theme in everything that we've been working on of catching up on deferred maintenance. This would be a good statement toward getting ahead as opposed to catching up.
Staying ahead of the curve. I agree with you 100%. Staying ahead of the curve.
It is a unique opportunity to effectively take a building and make it self-sustaining, which
Yes.
the town has been done before, to the best of my knowledge. There's no had revenue stream.
The reality is that when you have the funds available, it gets fixed. If you have to push it off a little bit, it doesn't get fixed or it gets slowed down. And then the repair becomes increasingly expensive. And I also think that the community, when they decide on this, is going to look very favorably if we're able to put this in so it self-funds itself. And if down the line you find out there's an embarrassing surplus, we can deal with that. But this is probably not the best time to do it.
So one thing we could do, maybe in advance of town meeting to address this issue, if everyone feels the same, is we could ask council to draft a policy that would be compliant with general law. And then we could vote to adopt the policy. And so we get this, when we get this question, we could say, we voted to adopt this policy as to the rents that the future expected rents, assuming this provision gets voted in, and this is the policy of the select board under the applicable, general law, and so we can, sort of formalize our intent, because I do think it might help to start formalizing where it could be appropriate, some of these concepts that we have, but we just maybe need to lock them down. Or we could have a policy ready to go to formalize too, once it passes.
I've been looking ahead at the next, so after next week, you take, I think a much involved break, and then 10:24 is the next meeting, so maybe we'll circle that for that.
Yeah, that
I
sounds
have a
good.
few things we want that night. I mean, presentations and things like this.
I would agree with that.
Yeah, how does the board feel about
Very
either
much in
policy or anticipated policy?
Very much in agreement.
Policy, okay. Absolutely,
I'll talk.
that's a great idea.
So on a related note of formalizing, we've had a lot of questions about affordable housing, little a, big A, how it works. I think that's another good place that maybe we want to start formalizing, including with the assistance of our lawyers. We've talked about the lotteries, for example, and striving for local preference of various residents. Would the board be similarly inclined to
Yes.
ask our lawyer to begin formalizing?
I think we've got to tighten that up.
policy and
Questions
process?
about what? CPC had questions.
Yep.
No. I agree.
The neighborhood conversations that I've had, that's far and away.
Yep.
The question that comes up the most.
So what exactly are we gonna do with those?
And listen, we know that we have people out there, including our Affordable Housing Steering Committee, our Affordable Housing Trust, to the extent that they want to provide input or assistance on that. We certainly welcome their feedback and comments. They can communicate information directly to Mr. Senior if that would be helpful, or to the board. And so, again, we know we have a lot of interested, talented individuals out there, and they should reach out to the board to weigh in if they have information they want to provide from their experience, because I would find that helpful.
Welcome any help from the Affordable Housing Trust.
I'll work on the October 24th.
Okay. So for both policies. Are there any other updates that
Can I
we,
add on stuff?
Yeah, sure.
Chris, if possible, and I'm not saying it's not been done already, if we could reach out to the affordable housing and,
We will.
we can ask for their, if they,
I'll, if you, I'll see if they can participate in that.
yeah, that'd be
that'd
great.
be fantastic. Thank you.
Actually, the chair of the Affordable Housing Steering Committee, and I have. Like, telephone tech all day.
Oh, yeah,
It's
Yeah.
just parents' wedding anniversary, it's great, so they're all.
Wow.
So
nice. That's great.
I apologize.
Yeah, I'm sure he could provide some helpful tips, including on, veteran housing and senior housing programs. So I think that'd be
I
great.
think this is a great opportunity. I think there's a
Yeah.
lot of, fine tuning to do.
Yeah.
People have to realize that stuff out there. And the only thing that's locks in is protecting housing. Making it work.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's all the stuff.
And I think the board will still have to make choices too. I think council should present us with choices, policy choices that we may need to make, along with any input that we want to get from our colleagues across town. That'd be helpful. So we're going to aim for October 24th for the policy as to the rents and as to the affordable housing and how that process will proceed.
The 9 units.
For the 9 units,
Yeah.
and maybe a nod to the 4, but the 4 is pretty straightforward, yeah, but we should probably still,
So we understand
Acknowledge.
how it all works.
yeah, part of it is educational too, I think. I don't think there's anything else on town hall building unless someone has anything they want to add. Okay, police and fire, I'm sorry, fields and courts was next, Sorry, went slightly out of order this time around to shake it up. Mr. Plex and Mr. Grady, would you like to provide an update on courts and courts?
Well, we voted, and I'll speak
Playground.
for CPC.
So prior to CPC, the select board met and made the decision that the Fields and Courts plan needed to be amended in response to public feedback to try to make the most of our tax dollars. So we pulled out the Deer Hill proposal that reduces the ask by approximately $2 million. I want to acknowledge that we still have a need for additional fields in Cohasset. It's just that Deer Hill wasn't the right field this time around, so we're still looking for additional fields for the inventory. We also heard a lot about pickleball. So we want to make sure that going forward, that's something that we can bring to the town. But unfortunately, we can't do it this time around. However, that left $2 million of ask that went to the CPC last night.
And I want to thank CPC, every single member, for supporting this initiative.
I can't hear you,
I
Paul.
want to thank the CPC, every single member for supporting this initiative. It was unanimous in its support. And I just think it was a fantastic get together. On the pickleball part, as Michelle did look into, so people can hear, is looking to painting one of the courts, into a pickleball type / tennis court, so it can be used. They're looking at other options, so we're looking at kind of a pilot program for pickleball for those who are interested. But last night, showed a heck of a lot of support for this initiative, the courts, and I couldn't have been happier myself. And I'll say proud to be a member of the CPC as well as the board.
So CPC is now formally voted to recommend 25,000 for the lacrosse wall. 375 for Beechwood Playground,
Yes,
as well as 1.7, if I recall,
1.2
The whole package is 2 million.
Yeah.
million total package,
the full price for the tennis
full
courts. So
price for tennis
CPC is
courts. No,
fully funding
fully funding,
all of those projects, minus any grant money they get in.
minus any grant money we'll be able to pull in, and that's the 25,000 for the lacrosse wall, which is also contingent on some fundraising being done to match the
The wall can go up, but.
wall can go up.
Fundraising will
but
have to be for the turf.
Will have to be the turf, and then anything else is ancillary.
Because CPC can't fund turf.
They can't fund turf.
And we know, just for the sake of others watching who may not have seen CPC, that the Beechwood Playground has a $150,000 grant we're applying for, which may reduce
Yes.
the ask.
We'll know about that in December. So
But-
after,
Beechwood, I will say this, at long last, is going to get done.
Mm-hmm.
And
providing everyone votes at 10 a.m.
providing
So
everybody
please
votes
come
for
out
town
and vote at
meeting, please come out, vote at town meeting. At the ballot.
No, the answer is Beechwood, it will get done.
So because it's a CPC recommendation, this is full funding. This does not require a tax increase, so no votes at the ballot.
votes at
If
the
it
ballot.
passes successfully at town meeting, it gets done.
To see those hands. Waving the cards.
Excellent work. Chris and Paul, thank you for all of your efforts there, which were substantial, and to CPC.
And I will say as a caveat, Chris made one hell of a presentation, CPC.
For senior.
Thank
Chris
you,
Plex
Mr.
was fantastic too, so I'm
Yes.
throwing it all. in.
All the
And
Chris.
Justin with the printout, so why don't we just go around the table and say thank you to everybody? It really worked, came together well, and again, thank you, CPC.
Yes. Are there any additional discussions we want to have on Fields and Rec right now?
We've already updated the one pagers.
Thank you.
We just asked to tweak the video.
Sorry, just.
Well, it has been released yet, so that's okay.
Okay.
Still trying to get some tennis action in that video, so. We're-
Yeah.
That is the primary core of this now. so
Right.
I'll make sure.
Yeah,
Gigi doesn't have any? Gigi Mann?
They've been working really hard, and she's a very busy person, so. Justin has been like calling her like a stalker.
so you need some.
I'll ask my
access.
dog, you know what, I'll ask my daughter, if she has any, because she's on the tennis team, I'll ask her if she has any video, if she has, it, I'll get it to you
Do you have-
right away.
Or pictures? I mean,
Pictures are fine, yeah.
do you know Dan Leahy?
I do, yeah.
He probably has an archive of photos from tennis, like from the last couple of years, of
Okay.
the high school team
Yeah.
that he's playing.
Reach out to them.
Yeah.
I would also love this, live commentary from one of the coaches, or it would just be great. So, like,
Oh,
voice
so I was
over-
gonna say that this won't work, but when Emma Davis, her senior year, and she got the high five from Channel 5, and they came down and they profiled her because she was the one I was telling you about.
Mhm.
Never lost a set, never lost a match in high school, and won the state championship 4 years in a row. So she was picked for a high five, and they did a cute little thing, but she graduated in 2015.
She's still here?
Is she still in town? No, she's an
Oh.
assistant coach at Yale. But
Maybe she'll come up.
Yeah.
but if you Google that, Cohasset High Five,
Something online with you, Yeah. I should start at those tennis
Yeah.
courts. That's actually not a bad story.
and she, yeah,
Davis is the last name?
Emma Davis, I can get you contact info if you want. Or you can reach her at Yale, probably.
Yeah. I'll give her a ring.
So
Tell her Ellen
Emma
sent
didn't
you.
play on this type of court, show the crack courts. Emma didn't play on this type of court, and show a new court. But Emma did play on this type of
Yeah.
court, and this is what you're getting.
You too could become a coach at Yale.
You too, Coach of Yale, and
Or win the state championship.
Wednesday, so.
will be the
4
next
times.
Serena Williams.
That's impressive. Okay, great. So let's see, police and fire.
So I know
PNS.
Yes, so I know Michelle and you were exchanging.
Yeah.
The conversation with her, so that just trying to hammer out that one last.
Okay,
piece.
okay,
But otherwise, the building's great. I mean, the operations have been great. I just was working on a follow-up video that feature a little bit more of the fire side. Because
okay.
when I talked to one of the new members of advisory this afternoon, he came in this morning, and he mentioned that there was a little, knowing a little bit more about the fire aspect, that would be great. And Michelle did get a mock-up of what the fire piece would look like, by the way. We're just waiting for the police one, so we'll be able to share those. I mean, they're just sketches. They're
That's
not, you know,
great.
Perfect.
That's very helpful.
So I think that would be helpful, and I think just again, having people explain. What a decontamination area is, and why they need the space for training, because they get the EMS, they have to, do EMS, the emergency medical training has to happen every month.
Yeah.
And that's, some of that is classroom type, and they need space to do that. I like that, I did talk to the union president the other day, and they seem to be ready to engage, so. We'll follow up.
Thank you for that update.
I wonder, I'm sorry, I wonder if we need to tweak our vernacular, because we keep saying police and fire, and so I think there's a potential misconception in the public that 135 King Street is police and fire, and because we've heard what's going to happen to Elm. So even if we just start referring to police, fire, annex publicly, I think that would clarify. for
Police
people,
station and fire annex.
or something like that.
I think, yeah, that's a good point.
You do know that's not gonna work, though.
Yeah.
We're gonna try.
It's a nice thing to do. I admire it and I appreciate that.
Thank you, Paul. We're gonna try.
Police and fire,
I've been changing into public safety.
public safety, actually.
But I get people.
But it really is.
I do
though.
agree,
Yeah.
Ellen, I do agree with you.
The goal is to have it, in case of an emergency, the fire could operate in there, if there was a problem. in Elm Street. But Elm Street will be the fire headquarters.
Right,
And 135 King will be the police head.
right.
There'll be a fire presence at 135 King. With the base
Yeah.
and activity.
Yeah.
And the police will be able to have a presence, because they were all over in their cars anyway, at fire. As it would be. So.
Yeah.
That with what we gain is actually redundancy, which we don't have anyway. So
Right.
It becomes a second place to go if there's a problem. I think it's more likely that you go from home to 135 King if there was a problem with that.
Yeah.
Yes, moving on to school capital stabilization fund. Ms. Mar, would you mind providing a brief update on
A brief.
the
on-
forum?
Oh,
and-
the forum, I thought the forum was great. I was gonna reach out to Mr. Antarpi, see if he wanted to join the school facility committee. He's retired, he was former dean at Archbishop Williams for many, many years, so he has an educational background. And his wife is a realtor, so they're pretty tied into town. Because I think it'd be good. I appreciated their support. As empty nesters, I really
Mhm.
appreciated their support last night. I thought it was fine. Thank you, Justin, for minimal amount of screen time. But I think it went well. And then tonight I went to Capitol. And my notes, as my brain is dead. So Nick Berardi, who's terrific, and evidently his wife didn't have the baby today, is that correct?
Yes, she does. He's a little.
Yeah.
going day to day.
Yeah, so today was her due date. He really did a very, very nice job presenting where we were with the AI3 study, because the AI3 study keeps getting mentioned as the blueprint. And it really was just the stepping off point for what the work that Nick has done in terms of taking all of those things. Now, you have to remember the AI3 study, the opening paragraph said, this was done to support a statement of interest to the MSBA. So it's going to be, angled that way. So he has really looked at it with his knowledge, and he explained the process, and Capital seemed pretty comfortable. They had questions like, what happens if you do get in? Do you do the roofs? Do you not do the roofs? This MSBA element is kind of, it's the sticky wicket. You don't know if it's going to happen or not happen. And Nick said, listen, he goes, I'm proceeding as if it's not going to happen. He goes, we have responsibility for these buildings the way they are. And if it happens, then we adjust. But we don't know if it's going to happen next year. He goes, can I get another year or 2 or 3 out of the middle high school roof? He goes, probably. But he says, I can't assume we're going to get MSBA and then not pay attention to the roof, just as an example. So I thought it went well. We didn't really get into the language of the policy, because I said we hadn't had a read of it at the table here at select board. So that was kind of, they were like, okay, well, that's good. Because they had questions which they tabled until we had an opportunity to go through it. And so that was it. I mean, my portion of it, I don't know what they said after I left. I had to leave to come here. So I thought it was fine. There were some questions of what things that are new. So if the fund is specifically to repairs and maintenance, is air conditioning, which is new, does that fall under the fund? So there were some philosophical questions that, would have to be ironed out at a later date.
So that's a great segue actually to the Special Purpose Stabilization Fund draft policy, which was in your packet. Maybe this is a good time to begin discussing that. So I can provide a little background here. This is something that the long-term financial planning group drafted and met about a few times. And so that includes Mr. Dial, Mr. Hellman, Mr. Host, me, Mr. Senior, and Ms. Mullen. And so we edited it and wanted to give the select board a draft to consider and think through. So the beginning overview is really just a background for the reader on what this fund is. The funding source is also a background for the reader based on how the state law works. The financial goal that we've stated is to provide funding for future capital needs without forcing cuts to other capital or operational needs during that year. And what I would draw your attention towards is exactly what Ms. Maher is talking about, where the source of the most discussion has really been about if we're still going to use capital stabilization to fund some school-related capital items, what gets funded through capital stabilization? What gets funded through school stabilization? Where's the dividing line, and how do we allocate ourselves appropriately? Because the point is to really add more money to the amount that schools get, recognizing we have these repairs coming up. But also try to create some policy, which is the select board's decision and purview under our bylaws to do so. But certainly, obviously, we're taking an input from others. So the way that we began thinking about sort of a dividing line is what is associated with the facility and the sites that was like permanent fixtures or embedded within the structure, such as school roofs, windows, doors, HVAC, other permanent items. That would, let's say, field ground
Landscaping,
Yeah, land, well,
driveways, sidewalks,
Driveways.
fencing.
yes, that was considered in the school fund category. The other capital expenses such as computers, information technology, the desks, the equipment, that was viewed as going through the town capital stabilization fund, as well as other sources that may be available, like free cash, for example. And there was discussion about not wanting the existence of a school fund to preclude requests for other school items. So, for example, if there was a need in a particular year, they could still request that item from the capital stabilization fund. Let's say there was a big security issue and we needed to address that, for example. That was something that we just wanted some flexibility. So I put it out there in terms of the school stabilization fund for people to think about. The other big point that I think we all, that's embedded within this draft policy that we've been talking about, but I think it's important to have a policy so we can plan, is that there's an expectation that the select board will continue to fund this at 1.5 million, increasing by 2.5% each year. Because we know we have this huge list that we need to get through. Unless and until there's some substantial change in circumstances. So for example, we get into MSBA. And MSBA says hypothetically, take down half of the high school. Or just redo everything at the middle high school. And we say, okay, we want to do that. Let's take a look at reducing the fund to really focus on Deer Hill and Osgood. And what would be the appropriate level there. And we're gonna do a debt exclusion for the bigger middle high school. And also use drawing down the fund to maybe soften the tax increase of what that may look like. And again, this is just a hypothetical, not saying this is gonna happen, not saying this is what MSBA will tell us, just to show how the flexibility of the fund can enable us to draw the fund down if the select board felt appropriate. But it's envisioned that it's really with a lot of forethought in a very substantial circumstance, because we do need this money to keep up these schools. So, I'm sorry, no, I was just gonna end by saying the last part was more just trying to build in process, including for the school committee to weigh in and work with the select board before we start going through the regular process to try to proactively come up with a 3 to 5 year plan, which we've already been doing with the
Mhm.
help of Nick, but you know, to continue that process.
Mhm.
So we're proactively planning and then invite stakeholders in, including school facilities, capital budget, advisory to attend and provide input. So that way we could be collaborative in terms of trying to be on the same page. Okay. So thoughts, questions?
I don't want to preempt anybody's comments because I tend to talk a lot. I'm sorry.
No, you go first.
Are you sure?
By the way,
Okay. So there was some, in the first bullet point, under schools special purpose stabilization fund, there was some consternation, and I agree with it. The statement on the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, fifth line, the school fund may also be used to pay for expenses associated with feasibility studies in connection with proposed major school building renovation or construction progress, provided that such feasibility study is required by the MSBA or part of an application for an MSBA funded project. I completely disagree with that. I think the point of the fund is for repairs and maintenance, and as such should not be part of any MSBA project or initiative. And that there was some consternation from capital about that particular line. Do we fund a feasibility study out of this instead of replacing windows that are leaking? You know, as an,
what part do you want? I'm sorry.
I'm on the first page of the policy, the first bullet point.
Yeah. There it is.
Yeah.
I see that.
Because in a feasibility study, you know, if they said, and the example I used was, if they said, well, you know what, we think that your water really needs testing, or it's bad. Do we use repair and maintenance funds to do water testing or to do air quality testing? I just think it's a slippery slope, and it starts to confuse the two issues, which I think are completely separate. I think the school stabilization fund for repairs and maintenance of existing buildings is what we've been talking about. And this confuses it, saying, yeah, but we can, if MSBA comes in or they don't come in, we could use it, maybe we want to use it. And so I have a problem with that.
I agree with that.
I think
I think
agree as
that's a
well.
good point, because it's very important that we bring this forward with clarity.
It's a good find out.
Are you in agreement too, Mr. Clark?
I think I am. The one question I have is, I think, but I would ask for the board's feedback, that I'm always reluctant to have very restrictive language in a document like this, because there's gonna be something that comes out that you didn't anticipate.
Right.
And the test case that I'd like to throw out is there enough flexibility between what funds come out of this, the stabilization fund, and what comes out of general town budget, that if we needed something and we couldn't use stabilization fund for it, we could just use other town funds?
I think the answer is it depends, not to be a lawyer about it, but it depends on the amount of funds that we have and the timing of those funds. And so, for example, if we needed to come up with funds to meet MSBA requirements to do a feasibility study for them to access what could be pretty significant state
Yeah.
funding, then it would depend on the amount of free cash that we have available or what capital stabilization funds.
Let me ask the question a different way. There will still be upkeep and capital to the schools coming from other sources.
But yes,
Okay.
yes.
So if we ran into a situation where we needed money to do something that we would normally do out of general town funds, we
Yeah.
could use the stabilization fund for most things and do the unforeseen thing out of general town funds.
There's, advisory also has $100,000 emergency fund,
Okay,
which has been used in the past, and it doesn't require any kind of town meeting or warrant. And it's been used for that, like something has happened. It was the telephones, wasn't it, Chris, a couple years ago? The whole telephone system in the schools went.
Okay.
And, you can't run the schools without a phone system. So advisory was tapped with it. And then there's a payback mechanism because it eventually comes out of capital. So there was a payback mechanism from capital back to advisory during town meeting to replenish back their emergency fund. But there is that.
I appreciate indulging the edge case curveball question. With that, I'm comfortable with your suggestion to remove that language.
And what I would say too is that, not to burst all of our bubble, but this is a policy that the select board sets. The select board can also change it. If we want, but I hear you, and I think that this was not a heavily discussed item. This is actually something that the statute permits, if we're so inclined, if we felt the need to, for whatever reason, so including to use it as a planning tool. But
But we're not so inclined.
we're not so inclined, so that's fine. So we can take that out if that's the desire of the board, which it sounds like it is.
Yeah. The only other comment I have, and I mentioned it to Jean on the first draft and not the whole group because we didn't have it on the agenda, is with policy. So if we're in the same bullet point, the second line, the purpose of the school fund is to address facility purchases, projects and repairs such as school roofs, building fixtures, replacement of all or substantially all windows, doors, flooring, HVAC, or other permanent items. To Chris's point, that leaves out something, okay? That's not delineated. If, and Jean, I like the language you said earlier, internal, external structures and mechanicals. You know, then it kind of leaves it open because you don't know what you don't know. You don't know what's behind the wall. Nick doesn't know what's behind the wall, and something, you know, and I think such as school roofs, or I just think it opens Pandora's box for scenarios.
We could also, instead of doing such, should say such as,
Yeah.
we could do including without limitation. Where we could say, and I'm sorry, I'm just pulling up the Word version so I can edit it in real time. You could say. The purpose of the school fund is to address. Facility and. External. Site purchases, projects and repairs, including without limitation. So this is a non-exclusive list. School rules, again, it's just meant to be exemplars, not meant to be the exclusive list.
You have permanent items in there, though. That's, that's kind of a broad stroke. So that could be internal, external. I mean, permanent items are items that are,
We could put a period after repairs.
yeah.
Well, I guess it's just the point with the policy, the more you put into a policy, the more you have to adhere to it.
Well, I agree. That's what I'm saying. The permanent items leaves open the door in case you do have that special case.
Yeah,
Like even, for instance, I'm just using a flagpole blows down, it's gonna go back up,
mhm,
that kind of thing.
yeah. It's a permanent fixture.
So,
So what about the purpose of the school fund is to address facility and external site purchases, projects and repairs?
I think that works nice.
Yeah.
I agree.
yeah.
Okay,
Good.
And,
all
and I
right,
think
making
it's,
progress.
yeah, and I think it supports our narrative of, really starting to plan for the maintenance and upkeep. It dovetails nicely with, the revolving fund for One Pleasant Street, and this, and roads and sidewalks. And I think it's a very strong message that we're presenting to the town. We're not asking for new, we're asking for, let's fix what we have.
Okay,
And I think that's very important overall, because we are really looking forward to a pretty substantial increase on a lot of things that need to be done. And I think we need to demonstrate a high degree of financial prudence. And this is exactly the type of thing where we demonstrate, yes, we're doing these things, but yes, we are. And again, quite honestly, these are the type of questions that people who might be opposed to this are likely to raise. Some legitimately, some not so legitimately. So to the extent that we can take the wind out of those sails, we'll be done.
are there any other edits or questions that folks have on the school portion? I would recommend we save the road portion to the road item.
No, I'm good, thank you.
What I might suggest with this policy is maybe what we can do is, and Mr. Senior, I would look for your guidance here. Maybe it would be appropriate to send it to advisory for their review at this point, if the select board wants to vote to recommend the school portion of the policy.
Sure.
And get,
Just send me the updated version.
okay,
Tonight, like I said last week.
and then maybe we can do the formal vote, either next week or the following week, once we hear back from budget and, if there's anything extra from capital as well.
We're not gonna do roads and sidewalks tonight.
We can do roads, yes, we are gonna do it, but, we still have the school
Oh,
environmental
sorry.
study
Yeah,
beforehand.
got it.
Insight testing analysis. So.
Okay,
hand it
so
to you again.
hand it over to me again. It really didn't get into the conversation tonight before I had to leave Capitol, so I can't really articulate any of their perspectives.
Maybe we
Sorry.
could talk about the revise, so,
Of
we
the
did-
revised, yeah.
we did look at it, everyone has a copy of the warrant language right now, which is Article 10 on page 9. This reads, I'll just read it for the sake of those watching from afar. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate or transfer from available funds the sum of 400,000 for the purpose of paying for the cost of site evaluations for current and alternate sites for Cohasset middle school / high school, as well as the financial options and considerations for the repair, addition, renovation, or replacement of said building, or to take any action relative thereto. And so this was language that Ms. Mar graciously drafted for us because the prior language seemingly got a little too close and could be confusing with what we already paid AI3 to do and what they actually did do. This was meant to represent, we're really looking to the future now. We're not looking at existing conditions. We already paid for existing conditions. And so we did get feedback from the school committee, the chair and vice chair, which is embedded in this language as well. But I'm sorry.
No, no,
I
no, no,
was just
you
trying
did
to give
it.
you some time.
Thank you.
and buying some time.
I've got too many warrants in front of me. Yeah, no, so, I think it's clean. I think it's clear on what the intent is. And that's it. Like I said, I don't know what, I mean, depending upon the source of funds, capital, I mean, they'll have an opinion.
Mhm.
I'm going to advisors tomorrow night. I'll ask them what they think of it. So,
And Mr. Senior, the source of funds is free cash, correct?
okay.
That's
We
fine.
plan for that.
I
yeah.
mean, I don't word it that way. It's always worded this way, just for safety purposes.
Right, but the
That's
intent,
the
but
intent.
the intent,
Yes.
if I'm
I-
asked tomorrow night, the intent is free cash.
Yes, I'm also waiting to find out what the number we filed for is with the state. And the expectation is by November 15th, we'll have to certify. that.
Okay.
This is also not, it's like. But that's the intent.
Okay.
There's no other source anyway, so it's gotta be that.
I'll just ask something about that.
Of course.
Ellen, thanks for putting that together. My only thing that makes me a little nervous is alternate sites. You know, I'm a little leery on that. I gotta be, it's just me personally. Because what we're looking to do is the evaluation for the current and what we can do. Maybe it was replacement down the road, but that's the stabilization fund is kind of working towards maintaining what we have.
Mhm.
So alternate sites just kind of, that just threw me off a bit. So I just, so in other words, we're paying for someone to walk around town. And I'm not saying this to be a wise guy, but look at, well, we might be better served if we move it across over to Whitney Woods.
Hmm.
Because that ground level's flat, it's ideal, town owns it. Do you see what I'm going with it?
Yep,
That's the only, anything else is perfect, just the alternate sites threw me off a bit. I
Yeah.
just want to throw that out there.
I think it was, correct, well, I had taken it from the original language, but hypothetically, MSBA could come in and say, you know, the crux of your problem is you have too many students in 220,000 square feet, and we recommend that you build a middle school at an alternate site to be determined. You know, is it on Milliken? I'm not saying it is, but I'm just saying it could be somewhere else. So I think it was to keep that door open for,
Or what they could say, which came up yesterday at the forum, is MSBA would say, if you would like. Or we would hear from the consultants who work for MSBA all the time, they would say, well, MSBA is likely to say that if you want a new school, you will need a regional school with one of your
Most likely.
neighbors,
Hang on, I get that.
and that would require an alternate site.
so what if it said or and not and?
Maybe and, or, I mean, I wouldn't dispute it, it's just the alternate that throws me, because we heard that last night about combining the schools, if
Yeah.
MSBA wants us to do that. I think that people looking to spend this kind of money, again, with all the
Mhm.
studies, quote unquote, that have
Yeah.
been done, I think there's been a lot of misconceptions about them out there.
Mhm.
I think we might be adding to a little bit, it's just the alternate, so we're building it up again, what we're trying to do with this program is prepare, place, move forward.
Yeah.
That was my only caveat to that.
Yeah,
And I must say that I see the logic of that. Because it opens the door to people who are going to be opposed anyway to say, aha, they're trying to start planning for a brand new school for X amount of dollars. So if we could wordsmith that a little bit to take that uncertainty, because I think Paul, it's a very good point.
What if we got rid of paying the cost of site evaluations and then just put for Cohasset Middle School, High School?
Yeah, that's fine.
And so we
does.
take away current and alternate sites, just to simplify it a little more.
Yeah, 'cause
and-
you've got evaluations in, not you, just we're in, in plural.
So it leaves open the door of what
Yes.
MSBA may recommend, like what we're trying to get is a read on maybe where MSBA may go, so we can plan around that. If they're gonna say regional's the real option, then it would help to know that.
Well, you said appropriately last night, MSBA is gonna wanna know, and, that we're doing something about it as well, I think, and when you said it,
I
too.
think
And I agree with that wholeheartedly, which is,
So forgive me, I don't know if it was Jason last night or Jason at Capital Budget tonight. He said, the AI3 report from which Nick's report came out really was the snapshot of the buildings in time. The feasibility, this study is to take that snapshot and craft where our options might be going forward for, continued maintenance, for a renovation, for a repair. So it's really the next step after the AI3 study.
So Chris, I don't have a Word document on this. Do
Yeah,
you
I
have that?
I
Okay,
struck the language for
Okay.
current and alternate sites.
want to make
just
sure we don't.
For the cost of site evaluations for, which I think was applied back at the end.
I think
Yeah.
that was, Gene, that was elegant solution, almost like it was written by an attorney.
But not being Data's one, nor representing the town. for the record.
I got that.
One thing I would draw everyone's attention to is that we have the school committee weighing in, which I think makes sense, and I would suggest we also do that for Article 9, the school purpose stabilization fund, because they are
I agree.
the other big elected committee that has a, strong stake in this. If everyone is comfortable, then I can confirm with the school committee, we would like their vote on the warrant.
I'm comfortable with it.
Yes, is that okay?
Yeah,
Okay.
fine with me.
Okay,
Unanimous.
all right. Is there anything else we should discuss about the study at this point? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ellen.
Yes, thank you for drafting that. Road and sidewalk. So maybe we can start with the stabilization fund first on the road and sidewalk. This is the policy, excuse me, the draft policy. So this hopefully is a little bit easier because it mirrors the school language, and it's exclusively for roads and sidewalks. There's not really that much more to be said.
The only thing I would say, just from
Okay.
a organizational perspective, I would keep the policies separate.
Okay.
So that if one needs to be amended.
Okay.
The other one doesn't get engaged in that.
Okay.
Just by,
And then write a note to myself. That's an easy fix. Is everyone in agreement on that? Keep the policies separate? I can
I,
quickly fix that.
I agree.
Right?
One question. On the third bullet, the 3 to 5 year plan is mentioned twice. I don't know.
We were really excited about it. Just kidding. Let me
So in
see.
the second line, select board shall request from town staff a 3 to 5 year plan along with suggested amount and items for spending and appropriation. And then several rows below, select board shall request from town staff a 3 to 5 year plan for the use of road fund funds.
Yeah, no, this is a extra line that I think,
So I put
In the
house
editing.
at that Gene.
So that's not substantive, it's just a potential typo.
I think it got cross edits. I think we go with the second. And so if we delete the first sentence, I think that addresses it.
So you're gonna take it along with the suggested amount items.
So now it reads, prior to determining the annual road fund appropriation for the upcoming fiscal year, and prior to determining what items may be funded from that fund for the upcoming fiscal year, the select board shall request from town staff a 3 to 5 year plan for the use of road fund funds.
They do know that Because that may be an evolving.
Yeah.
All right, because something may come up as a priority that we're able to do, there goes, say, South Main.
Including a projection, should be a projection. It's a
Yes.
projection.
All right,
It's a
perfect.
projection.
But you don't want to be hammered in, locked in this. The committee switches and says, well, you can get this done because there's certain decisions that have been made or haven't been made.
Yeah.
Or there's a dire condition someplace, we have a sinkhole, something along those lines.
I think, I just think the point is to try to have a semblance of a plan so we can discuss what that plan is. Ultimately, the select board are the road commissioners here, but we still have to get the appropriation from town meeting, and so part of this is trying to let our residents know what the plan is.
I think it's fine.
Okay. So I just, edited to say instead of road fund funds, which is technically correct, but sounds weird, just road funds.
Actually, I think that may have been intentional road fund funds.
It was intentional.
Okay.
But it's just weird.
Road fund funds.
Yeah.
Resources? Use of road fund resources? Or,
I would just
capital?
leave road funds. I would
Road
say,
fund,
yeah,
okay.
singular.
Got it.
See, well, it's not much more than
Okay.
today. I remember.
Oh, yep. Okay. All right, so I will adopt these edits. Anything else? And I'll send everyone an updated version for the next meeting. Or Chris, I'll send it to you if you want to send it to advisory. Yeah, let me do that. Are there any discussions that we want to have about road and sidewalk stabilization fund, the forum from last night?
I thought well, I missed part of it. But the feedback is it all went very well. Public's been very receptive towards it. And questions were answered. Just in the presentation, some of it. And it's my favorite part of me.
Good news is that you can go back and watch it.
That's the beauty of it. Yeah, but I like the affirmation.
You're not shy, are
And
you?
there probably weren't any, but.
See you in the next video.
Anyway, so good thing I missed it. But I think the feedback, committee members who were there, seemed positive. I think people are anxious to see, let's put the pedal to the metal.
Once more, yeah.
The smooth roads, exactly. So it's the roads to walk on. Brian was fantastic.
Yeah.
Big kudos to Brian Joyce. Answered every question, and I think put a lot of fears to rest. So I think it went well.
So I agree with everything that's been said. Probably not for this town meeting, but I do think at some point in the future, I think it's a good idea to take a look at the private ways and see if the same mechanism could be expanded to accommodate them, but doing that in time and working through all the zoning issues probably won't fit for this special town meeting, but I do think it was a fair point that we should
Well,
follow up on.
I agree with it. That's, thank you for bringing that up. 'Cause
Yeah.
Gene was
I'm
fan-
sorry.
Gene was,
Private ways.
oh,
Private ways.
Yeah.
Gene was fantastic in our answers. I mean, it does open up a ball of wax, but it's definitely something that the select board should start looking into. Is
Yeah, private ways have been a contentious issue. A lot of ramifications, and zoning, of course, is part of it, but there's other issues. And we do have a number of them. And we've heard over the years, well, why should we pave it? Why should we plow it? I'm paying taxes. It should be paved, it should be plowed. I think we lack a definitive policy, and that's something that I think that type of legal concepts. I think we need to get an overview of that from town council. Because it gets pretty complicated. But I do agree that we don't want to address it now, but at some point in the future, it needs to be addressed, but let's get this stuff done.
So, town meeting did pass, I want to say in the 1950s, that we do pave our, we do plow the private ways, and we do have a betterment policy to assist owners of private ways and the upkeep. That said, the betterment's still, it's essentially like a loan to those residents on that street to help them manage the cost of paving their roads, which is different than obviously having the town incur those costs. And so there's sort of the gulf, right?
Yeah, and as far as, normally when you have subdivision law in place, if you're going to carve off some building lots, your responsibility is to build a road up to standards that can be maintained. And here they've been kind of put in, there was a driveway that gets expanded, there's a summer house up there that goes year round. And over the years, all these things have happened. And we didn't get the initial infrastructure done that normally the developer would have done. So we're playing catch up. But at some point, we are gonna have to address it, but I think I agree with Chris.
Yeah.
Not now.
Yeah, not now, but it is a bigger issue and it's not just, separate houses. There are whole neighborhoods that are private ways.
Yes.
Maybe they have an HOA, maybe they don't. There are streets that were developed that as they're private ways, but they were never developed to be a private way. I happen to live on one, and it's quite cumbersome legally for homeowners to petition to get their street to go from a private way to a public way. You have to go back to the original deeds and the original developer and all of that to find out the intent of why it was made a private way to begin with. So, but
To be cynical, the reason it was made a private way to begin with, because it was the cheapest, easiest way to do it. And the developers,
topic for another year.
yes.
Okay. I do think we're gonna get some of these questions at town meeting, and so we may want to be prepared for how we want to address them. I mean, the answer may be as simple as, we hear you. We can't address it right now, currently at this town meeting, because there's other stepping stones that need to happen, including the zoning work we're currently doing. But at this, as well as probably we need to do a fiscal impact analysis would be my suggestion for if you want to now start converting private into public, you would need to figure out what the impact would be for the town to do all that upkeep and whether we could responsibly handle it.
I understand the time meeting is the only authority to have public ways.
Yeah.
That will have to be.
Yeah.
Process.
Yes.
But is there a way of getting out that we did hear what they said?
Well, we're talking about it right now, but I'm not sure. I mean, let's think about
We'd
it.
have to answer, if someone stands up at special time meeting and asks the question, then we could have a prepared response.
You do have a
Yes.
sidewalk committee. I'm sorry, what is it?
Sidewalk safety and connectivity.
Could-
committee.
Ask them.
Yeah.
Because they already sent us.
And when they stand up and ask, we could invite them to join the sidewalk.
We did.
But it's, road paving is so specific and people, you see that immediately. But there's lots of services that we as taxpayers pay for that we don't use. You could talk to all of us that don't have kids in the school anymore, but our tax dollar is going there. So to me, I'm for the study of private ways and how to accommodate them, but philosophically, we pay for things we don't use.
True,
yeah.
We're not an a la carte municipality.
And we have been trying to focus on really paving the large public ways we have that are a pain point for many residents who need them to get from one private way to another,
Well, everybody uses Elm. Everybody uses Maine.
in part to be equitable, recognizing that this is an issue.
It is.
There are a number of these issues that I think we can anticipate coming up
Yeah.
at town meeting.
Yeah.
No matter how much we've discussed here, so.
Yeah.
Jean, as chair,
Mhm.
you might want to think about. Do you want to designate people to speak to specific questions? Do
Mhm.
we, as a select board, want specific talking points for questions that are likely to come up?
Yeah.
But not trying to pass the buck, but
I think I have an idea. Well, I mean, we have liaisons, right, for all these different areas, and I think it would be expected that, and we could all work together and try to help each other think through answers to FAQs.
and this would be a case where I would expect one member to be speaking on behalf of the board.
Yep.
So to the
And-
extent we could have agreement on. what-
Chris, I think you're uniquely qualified to handle all these topics. So,
So I can be the ombudsman.
so if I could make,
I think it's a good idea to keep a running list of FAQs. We did this for the town and fire station forum, trying to think through topics that may come up. I think we should do, this is probably the biggest one for the road and sidewalk. We may get some questions on drainage, and so and for rec, we may get some questions about the Deer Hill field, and so I suppose,
I'll bet you $1 affordable housing.
Yeah.
I interrupted you, I apologize.
Yeah. no,
You mean town hall?
The affordable housing component of town hall. I think it's likely that someone will walk up to a microphone and ask, how will this be managed?
Very much so.
mhm. So what I would ask, if everyone is okay with this, is why don't we, in our respective liaison positions, and I'll do town hall, police and fire, because I already have started some of those FAQs. Please just keep a running list of like your area when you see things coming up. And then as we get closer to town meeting, we can sort of walk through some of those in preparation to make sure we're all on the same page on everything, and go from there and help each other brainstorm if we feel like we need a little more help on something.
And we just have a working session for that reason.
We could do a working session too. That's a great idea. So we'll put down the private ways as an FAQ. Okay, anything else on road and sidewalk before we move on? Okay. Long-term financial planning, so. We, we have the final report, but now we realize that the numbers are changing in light of CPC updates. So we are updating the final report because it's probably less confusing to have the actual projections than what we thought previously for the projections. So, Mr. Senior, what do you think the timeline on that final report is?
The next couple of days, because I am just waiting for. Brian to post.
Okay,
I already had the other couple of weeks, so we have to just change them. Which are all good, they're all moved.
okay, okay. So, the group is, as you heard from Mr. Senior, doing final once over. The updated financials are in there. And we did discuss doing a video. Which is probably one of the most boring videos out there on. We haven't done it yet, still brainstorming, but on trying to do a video, just like a quick highlight and sort of, hey, go check out the long-term financial report, which is so exciting if you want to do more. So that's on the horizon.
Yeah.
And we also discussed trying to do at the beginning of town meeting, and coordinating with the moderator to make sure this is okay with him, a very brief overview on the long-term financial planning report, because I think a lot of people will have questions about the cost. And just to lay the foundation for how the big picture fits together. Because that might be helpful just to, again, set the stage as all, the articles start to come up and people are, trying to calculate and move through that. So that's the update on long-term financial planning. Any questions on that? Nope. Okay, community engagement.
we updated, we have 5 sheets.
Okay.
Including the updated one on fields and courts.
Absolutely.
Yeah, those are school facilities, those are roads, those are all available. So you can print them off the website. You can notice that there's now 5 separate sections now, which is growing and stuff, so. There's also on the fields and courts, all the accessible, we brought all the links up for all the studies. People keep forgetting, to get all these studies, so they're right there. Read them all, including all the analysis, so that's all there. In fact, advisory has all that in advance of that discussion. Tomorrow, there's a lot of material, so I curated a little bit of it to get them to get stuff easily. If you think that we need to highlight certain parts of that, just let me know, we can pull it out.
We have a couple of videos upcoming, public safety part 2, along with courts and playground. Upcoming as well.
Recreation.
Recreation.
Sports wall playground.
Well, we had some pushback last night at CPC, so we gotta get someone over to do that video.
Okay.
Am I on microphone?
Yeah,
Yes,
yes, it's all recorded.
Well, we'll get some local residents.
Exactly.
Or,
We are.
and you got something to do with, I just saw this morning. Roads one and school one, I think they both came out really well.
And then hopefully, recreation along with public safety in the next, hopefully 7 days or less. That'll be, out for the public. And we have our next forum coming up on October 16th over at the Paul Pratt Memorial Library. That will be at 7 o'clock. I will connect with Emma tomorrow. So thank you for letting me know that. I'll connect with Dan as well tomorrow. Just a couple of impressions here, public safety video from about a week and a half ago, almost 4,000 impressions on social media, which is huge. That is the number of times that those was seen on screen. So almost 4,000. So it's 3,978, which is pretty close. And then the town hall video is now up to more than 500, which is great. And then the other videos that were posted about 12 hours this morning, I don't have a lot of data on it yet. But usually within 24 hours, they're able to kind of see some of that data moving along. And then we will talk about the long-term financial video as well. That'll be coming and try to put that into perspective for folks and make it a little bit more.
We might need to work on a 1-pager too, just
Yeah,
to like summarize all the
We can have
projects.
that, absolutely.
Because we haven't put costs to any of the 1-pagers, which I think is probably important to summarize.
Oh, yeah, the tax.
Yeah.
And
I think it's-
any feedback from any of you in the community?
Yeah. I was about to address that. Had some looked into what's going on in 143, and I'm not an active participant. But I asked some of the people who are behind the scenes on there, and what they're reporting is the quality of the engagement. The number is much more thoughtful than in many other things. The number of times posts are read is substantially higher. And the people who are reading them, even if they're not commenting when they do, the comments tend to be more thoughtful. And I think the conclusion is that the population at large is paying a lot closer attention and a lot more serious attention to what we're trying to do here. And there's an overall sense that we're working very hard in the select board and the other committees, and we always ought to remember the other committees, all the hard work they're doing. So I think it's going well, and I think Cohasset is well served, and I think Justin has been doing a good job. And the rest of the boards and committees, including the select board, I think are addressing some very serious problems. And I think the population is responding well. Congratulations to you all.
Any other comments?
The questions I keep getting are around the affordable housing, so
Yes, that's also another video that we're working on. That is on the docket as well. I forgot to add that. Thank you.
will it go into some depth to explain the process for figuring out how the apartments will be offered to some and not to others?
Yeah, if that's something that the board would like.
That's the questions that I'm getting. People seem to understand 40B and how 40B works, but there's often an assumption that lowercase a, uppercase a, affordable are very, very similar. Now, part of this is gonna hinge on the policy that we determine for those apartments, but I do think getting some information out about that would be useful.
Yeah, I think we want to land on the policy that will drive the content.
I think it's a very good idea. That'll still give you a couple weeks for that time.
And I was gonna say, we're still
5 weeks.
pretty far out in the world of, you know, social media and engagement.
With social media.
But it's a good point
Yeah.
on. So maybe actually we want to see if our lawyers can do that sooner rather than later, October 10th, on the affordable housing piece. But the revolving fund's still later, but the affordable housing, so maybe we can advance the conversation on that more substantively.
Take this time again to emphasize that we welcome input for housing trust at any point in time during this process.
So I just have one update. Please. So October 16th. Is an opening at the Cohasset Rotary Club. They meet on Monday night. And Tim, I'm gonna say his name wrong, Bernanke from the Recreation Commission presented Fields and Courts a few weeks ago. And I have offered to present the other projects and they would love to hear about them. So it's 30 to 40 people. It's a pretty sizable group. If that's okay with everybody.
I can meet you, do roads and sidewalks, I mean.
You want to tag team on it?
It's up to you. I'm
Sure.
happy to.
I will say, just so you know, that is one of the,
Forms,
that's the,
Fields and Rec.
Fields and Rec.
Right.
As well, just so you're,
That's the only opening they have before town meeting.
yeah, yep.
So,
Yeah.
We'll squeeze in both. We had 3 the other night. I think
Yeah.
we can
Yeah.
make it happen.
but so Justin, if I could have like 50 copies, I don't have enough ink in my printer to print them myself. 50 copies of each of the one pagers
Yeah.
for this, for the 16th,
Absolutely.
that'd be great.
I hate to say this, but I wonder if we should make a one pager of all the one pagers, just because it's a lot of paper for people to hold.
Mhm.
You know, instead of just like one sheet on all the projects.
And that's them.
No,
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 no, okay.
let them read.
Them or something?
Yeah, no.
No, I meant just like one page of like, here's what it is.
I mean,
But yeah,
you could have a cover page, but I think people are gonna be interested in the projects they're interested in and looking at more of the
Yeah, that's
detail.
true, that's true.
So.
Yeah.
We were
I-
taking them last night.
Yeah, yeah.
So, and they've been taking them, every meeting, so I think that's. It wouldn't be bad having this maybe a cover page, like just banned like the town hall, roads and sidewalks,
And maybe long-term finance can sort of serve as that, because we did it in the executive summary on all the projects without having to reinvent wheels.
put a dollar sign,
But that would be great.
yeah, there you go, long-term finance, just put a dollar sign, you're done.
Yeah. I reached out to the Legion and the Cohasset, the new Cohasset PSO co-presidents,
Yeah.
waiting to hear back on a date with the American Legion and the co-presidents, if that makes sense for them. And so right now, personally, I feel like we need to close the warrant. And then once we close the warrant, we can move more into like outbound marketing, just because there's been so many meetings to try to get everything closed. But I appreciate that you're trying to get on calendars too, which is really important as we move forward. So once I hear more specifics, I'll let folks know.
All right,
Okay, so we are now at special town meeting, the warrants and votes. So we've had requests from our committees to have the warrants in quote votable form, which I think many are, although I would suggest we probably want to focus on the substantive one. So right now, actually, maybe we should do this first. If we look at page 2, Articles 1 through 14. I think we've locked down all of these, including in terms of money from CPC, so it's very helpful to know those amounts. With the exception of Article 13 and 14. So here. The planning board is voting. They voted on number 4, but we're waiting for number 5. And I anticipate that we will do this on Tuesday. To move forward on. These 2 articles. Under the zoning bylaw. They voted them out. I talked to Mr. Callahan today, even though we have some pretty hefty things going on at town meeting. It's important to keep on with the zoning bylaw reform because these articles will help serve as the foundation for later articles. They're trying to do a spring town meeting. And so that group feels strongly and, you know, this is a priority of ours too. But I appreciate that we're trying to do a lot, including asking committees like advisory to review a lot. I think we probably have to power through at this point.
Yeah, see them.
Yes, so we need to get the final language out on Article 13 and 14 from the planning board, from the zoning bylaw working group. So Jack, that maybe that's your cue, but as soon as we get them, I can send them around, people can review and there's a lot actually on their website already, so you can see the summaries, etc. Yes, Ellen. Did you have a question?
A specific question
Oh, okay.
to a specific article.
So-
When you get there.
So before, I suggest we could go one by one, but
Okay.
I want everyone to just pause for a minute and take a look at the order. The order can be very important. Of the articles. Here we have. Sort of the, I don't want to say ministerial, but it is slightly ministerial, Articles 1 through 4 in the beginning. And then we go to Community Preservation Committee. And then we go to Town Hall, then Police and Fire, then Roads and Sidewalks, Schools. Then the school. Environmental and Site Testing Analysis, i.e. feasibility study, then the cemetery rules and regs. The wet law protection bylaw revisions, and then the 2 zoning articles. And Chris, the cemetery rules and regs have to be on the warrant, is that right?
Yeah, that's what council's supposed to say.
And same with the wet law protection bylaw revisions.
What they're attempting to do is put
Yeah.
things into the bylaws that have been in their regs for a long time at council's recommendation, but it's not, it's not,
I must do.
it's not urgent. The wetland, I mean, it's a good thing to do, but it doesn't, it's not urgent. I don't think it's kind of take a lot of time. It's just changing the definition of river, which is already in the,
Is that what it is?
it's already in the regs. It's just gonna go into the bylaws. So it's not changing, it's just adding it to, just adding it.
I'm gonna suggest if it's not urgent, then we flip Article 12 down to 14 and move the 2 zoning bylaws up. Earlier, just in case we start to lose people and have quorum issues. I would say 13 and 14 are probably more important in the grand scheme of where we're going. Including making some bylaw amendments to conform to Massachusetts law. How does the select board feel about the order, including the suggestion I just made to move wetlands to the end?
Comfortable with it?
I thought I thought about bumping up to the top under that, get them over from the bed, but I don't disagree. And, you know, that's, I was just like, get them up and get, I mean, they're basically simple, right? Cemetery in the wetlands protection law.
It should be,
I mean, they gotta bear a lot of discussion.
Okay,
and
no.
it shouldn't.
So if we get those. You know,
Article 2 is on here, but it's gonna get, there's nothing on it. So it's likely that'll just be passed. When I say just taken. So you're really only talking about the amendments, stabilization funds and then the one-time costs, which are just a couple of things. That shouldn't take more than just 10 minutes. First one is-
I think one of the things we should be aware of, and I don't have any opinion which way is that the three of the wetland protection zoning bylaw, 4 and 5. I don't know how it will play out, but some of the people whose ox is being gored, so to speak, are likely to sit out to the bitter end. And a lot of the people who are the concerned citizens may have left by that. And I just don't know how that will play out, but I'm quite sure that there will be people who are vehemently
I agree with that.
opposed. And they'll be there, and some of the more centrist voters will have left.
It's a good point, and I have heard
Good call.
on numerous occasions that
Sure.
people are suspicious about why zoning is always at the end. I certainly understand why zoning is at the end, but it might be an appropriate token to put it more towards the front at some point, just to balance things out.
So you don't have the problem with at the end is the vested interests stay around,
Mhm.
and those who aren't vested have already gone home. And then it can get,
And these really should be relatively straightforward.
yeah, I mean, really on the zoning issues, and great care was taken to make sure that everybody buys in, and we're hearing from the development community that they are in favor. And the really big issue was settled by a court case, which basically said, if you have the right to subdivide or divide your property, the town can't take it away. I'm oversimplifying. So maybe it won't be as vehement. That is an issue.
Are we gonna be tighter on the out of town speakers?
It's up to the moderator. Out of town speakers tend not to get allowed to speak. But that's up to them.
I think if you'll notice, the last time
We saw that
he was,
last call.
he was aggressive, and I know people have spoken to him saying that what are these people repeatedly who are not town residents or attorneys claiming to represent town residents, but there's no resident there that they represent. And I think he's sensitive to that, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't bring it up again.
This is why I wanted to bring up order, because order is important in terms of how to plan this.
I'd be comfortable moving what is currently Articles 12, 13, and 14 to earlier in the warrant.
You want to keep people in the room. School articles for the last two, no one's gonna read it.
I know, although I do worry, like, some people have very young children and there's only, there's only so long with babysitters and, if they do the rec program, that only lasts until 10. And so if it starts going beyond 10, then they have to leave because the rec program ends, which is the issue we had at the last town meeting, which is why people were like, oh, so many people are leaving. It's because the rec program ends at 10 and they have to get their children.
Can we ask the rec program to go to 11?
Well, keep in mind, these are young children
Yeah, on a
that
school night.
you don't want to keep super late, and so. There's a reason why it ends at 10 too. I mean, the only risk we run is that all of a sudden, like, there's a lot of, the zoning articles take up more time than maybe we expect and hope and think, and then it puts a crunch on some of these other pretty substantial items we're trying to advance. That's the only risk that I see, and it's hard to predict until, I feel like it was maybe 2 or 3 town meetings ago. There was a series of zoning articles that went through that during the regular hearing process, it was fine, but then at town meeting, all of a sudden it took like all these unexpected things coming out of nowhere.
Like the big home review.
and the Yeah, tree
Cutting and the trees and the.
It was just hard to predict what
Yeah.
was happening there, and so, again, it's
Well,
more of a
these-
time issue that I'm
these-
trying to think through.
These bylaws are basically precursors to Springtown meeting, right?
It's
that
a
we're
lot
looking
of
at.
cleanup, it's some updating of how we do our essentially exceptions in the use space, to make it compliant with new court cases, as Jack was saying.
Mhm.
It really it should be controversial,
No,
but
it shouldn't be, because.
So that,
what
we know that town hall and schools are gonna be the capstone of the evening, probably. For the most part, all, or every one of
think
our
a lot of it
initiatives.
will be.
I think, I know, I'm not, again, town hall, please, I mean, the four big ones. It depends, like, I agree with you about people having to get out of there at 10 o'clock, and those are important items to a lot of people. There's points to be made every day, you know, it's how fast zoning we get through, is my thoughts first, like you, punch them up and get them out with your normal order of business, then get into the meat of the meeting. Even though they're important, you know.
I can see the argument in either direction.
Yeah, so can I.
I'm not advocating strongly one way or the other.
Does anyone have a strong feeling one way or another?
No, I just brought it up for the board to consider, because I don't know what the answer is. But it could be a factor. I will say on the zoning, a lot of work has been done. And Judge Cutler's done a very good job. And the whole purpose of it is to simplify and codify our and make our zoning consistent with the zoning across the state. And if we get that message across, it may zip right through. I hope so.
Do you have any particular thoughts, Mr. Okay,
What if we took articles 1 through 4 because they're just quote housekeeping and put them at the end? And
That's a
then,
good idea.
and then we move everything up.
Could we bump it up, please? I know we usually do the normal housekeeping.
No, I'm just gonna, yeah, I'm just gonna do this.
Yeah,
One of the
yeah.
things that I've learned in time, get on a momentum. But there's things that can get passed easily, you go bang, 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 pick up one momentum. It helps you into the other articles. So if you start with something that's meatier, that's just my experience over the last decade, right? And those are all gonna be, just housekeeping. right?
Easy.
So you get to the flow, present, pass, present, pass, present, pass.
Okay,
Doesn't mean you're not gonna have big conversation about these other things, right? I think CPC is fairly locked up, and there's been unanimous votes, it's all good. And then you've done a lot of substantive work, boom, you're getting
Yeah.
that stuff. That's the only reason to have them early, is that you get, they're not gonna take very little time.
Yeah.
The flip side of it is they're gonna take a little time, if you do them at the end too. It's the other side.
My worry about the zoning is people that might stay up late. That's the vested interest.
And that's the whole,
I am a little leery about that because it was torpedoed before. And it is an important thing. They have done a yeoman's job.
could you just put them after Article 10? And then leave 11 and 12 at the end?
That might work.
Yeah, I think we could do that. Try to move them up higher, but not into like the strike zone of probably all the infrastructure. I think we definitely need to keep the infrastructure together because it's a related message. And conversation.
I don't think the cemetery rules and regs and the wetlands picture about all the changes, particularly conservation, so I think that could fairly quickly. At the same time, if for some reason those got bumped, the world wouldn't then be, because we're operating on the old regs and no one's gonna be doing any building in the winter, I think.
But we can do it any way we want, right?
Yeah.
So, Chris, I know I agree with you about getting the flow going. But what if we hit it hot and heavy? Well, start with CPC. And hit them. And get the housekeeping. Towards the last. I know it's a different way to do anything. I'm just curious, I'm throwing it out there. Then you can have engagement, and people do the, I know what you're saying, but, yep.
Are you worried about lack of a quorum?
That became a problem at the end of the last meeting, it was extremely close.
well, the only reason there's a quorum call is if somebody thinks they're gonna lose it, and that's the way to kill it.
Someone was trying to, and it didn't happen.
Well, if everybody leaves and somebody wants to kill the zoning thing, we'll do a quorum call at 10:30. But I don't know, Paul, what was your suggestion?
It's not suggesting, I'm just speculating, if we did. We just, went in guns blazing, we moved it up, started with CPC, town hall, police, fire, moved down the list. take cemetery, wetlands. And articles 1 through 4 and bump in the last, because it's housekeeping, I don't think we're, I mean, again, I know, I don't disagree with you about getting the flow, getting the other stuff over with. And moving on, it's just, we've all seen that people lose interest in the pet projects and, zoning is an important.
There are also people that come in after the quorum is called. I mean, there are people still strolling in 10 to
Yeah.
15 minutes past 7. So,
That's true. That's a good point.
so you know, if they come specifically knowing because they received the, well, we can't change the order then, but you know, that they'll come not for the first 4 articles, but they'll come when we really get into business. So they come in at 7:15 or 10 past 7, or if there's a line out the door. Sometimes there's a line out the
So
door.
I get them going.
There probably will be for this-
Yeah,
there probably will be a line for this meeting.
Which is probably right. It's again, I'm just throwing a thought
Yeah.
out there. If it's not. You're gonna have your diehards over.
So let's at least move it up. I think
Start with main feature.
what Paul's suggesting is we don't move it up way to the front. But up. So if it's the very last one, I think we will lose people, but if it's in the middle, people I kind of.
Well, if we
Yes.
did after allocation of funds for one-time costs, that would be. Then we moved it up to our, Article 13 and 14 to become 5 and 6, and we still left cemetery and wetlands protection, because if those aren't. A must do, then at least if we lose a quorum, we've got,
We can come back to it.
we can come back to it if need be. And so
I think that makes sense.
we could make 13 and 14 the new 5 and 6, and then just move the whole order down, so that will give people time if they're, struggling to come in late. Or, if they're waiting in line, the beginning is sort of ministerial. We try to get through the zoning more quickly and go from there.
Zoning can be very. It's best to John's gonna be done to figure out what the temperature is. I mean, I don't know that anyone's objecting, I think Jack will know that. If someone's gotta come out, if there's any. if- No one came to the public meeting. It's like one person.
I
I
was
think we did
there.
a very good job.
No, right, so there was this, last time there was visible opposition, came to the hearings, very loud, there's been nothing that I've seen, right?
It's pretty ministerial.
Because we dealt with them. I think the hardcore, did realize they weren't getting anywhere because their thunder had already been stolen. But the concern is, and I think Paul's right on that, people have a really vested interest if they sense there's a vulnerability. Then that's when you see, late at night, there's a quorum call and they're coming up and.
The other element of this house, quick to this station, right? Is remember, you wanted to set the tone with the long-term financial, if you're gonna comment at the beginning of being long-term financial, not get to it for half. an
I
hour,
know,
you're
that's,
gonna lose the whole
right.
theme of that. So,
Well,
So
you're not gonna lose the 4 big ones.
well, it's just a matter of linking them and people, eventually depends on the zoning
unless we
conversation.
can move up the committee report to right before. The
You're gonna
CPC.
ask, Dan,
So why don't I do, why don't? I might make a suggestion just for the sake of moving forward, that we move 13 and 14 to right before CPC. And I'll check with Dan to make sure we can sort of move the committee report to a more normal introductory place right after the zoning. Sort of reset it to the infrastructure project.
and then the tighter those presentations around zoning, the tighter the meeting will up.
How do people feel about that?
That makes sense.
It's fine.
It's gonna make the forum in 2 weeks really, really important. 3 weeks. It's 23rd. So. The more people that are educated in advance of the meeting, the better. it makes.
Agreed.
Totally want a one-pager on zoning.
Well,
Yes.
yes, we just didn't know what it looked like yet.
Yeah.
Saying.
Yeah.
If everyone's reading one pagers everywhere,
Yeah,
might as
it's gonna be
well
hard
throw
to
that
video.
into, it's like confetti's of one pagers. All right.
Get Tom and Judge Cutler walking on the street, man, in here.
Yes. Well, I mean, if you have video of what an ADU is or was, or, you know, setback or.
So if there are particular highlights acts you think should be focused on, just let us know. We can try to craft a video around that.
Yeah, I think we can do that. There's a lot of progress on the accessory dwelling units. Some of the holdouts on the zoning. There were some very healthy discussions and I think my latest understanding is they're fine with it. And that just removes a big. That was. That had been a bit of a contention, but I think that's been solved.
Okay, so everyone get ready for the zoning articles. They're coming to us next week. Like, we're gonna, this is warrant closing time. And if anyone wants a sneak peek ahead of time, they're all on the zoning bylaw working groups webpage on our town website, but I will see if Tom can get us the most updated version based on their vote tomorrow at planning board, so that way we can try to get those to you ahead of time. Okay. Now, Chris, could you just quickly walk us through the, let's just do very quickly one by one. Is this language all approved, each warrant article? Is
That's
this,
what we're, yeah. One is, we've already talked about, those are the three rules. Money from water retained earnings for their system maintenance. Supplement to the RTF, focuses we've explained, this charge of equipment and staffing, it's cost more. And then the pay transfer that happens every time, maybe that's the money we've done so far, that may actually change if we get another check before. town meeting.
Okay. And so when, there was discussion at, a committee about town manager motions, so if you wouldn't mind explaining for the audience what a town manager motion is?
So the motions actually implement the articles, and I did talk to council today, so the complicated ones can effectively say, for example, like the one on. The special purpose stabilization for the schools. Move Article 9 as drafted on the board. The ones for the bonding, which would be articles, the CPC would have a bonding aspect to it, so with Articles 6 and 7, or whatever the numbers. The warrant, the motion may be. Bond council may require that the motion look just like the warrant article. Which is probably not necessary, but they like to be built in suspensory, and nobody wants to debate that. But it'll be the same thing, right? The only thing that might be, the only thing that sometimes tweaks, like I said, for Article 1, if the number is going to be different. Right? Then that's the only, for that paying transfer. If there was a bill that popped up the last minute, right? Otherwise, the meaty articles, the really ones, and the same with zoning, the zoning articles kind of be what it is. The motion is, as mentioned in the warrant, right, as far as presented. Does that answer those questions? Okay.
Yep, so we're back at Article 1. We expect these are gonna be the numbers unless we get another check in the door.
Yeah, that's that.
Okay. Unpaid bills?
No, there's none.
None?
Just on here, just for safety.
Awesome. Okay.
Article 3, I'm hoping to have a move into, doesn't have to be done, but if we get free cash certified, I want to be able to put money into the capital stabilization fund. I just don't have a number yet to put in there.
Okay.
This is something that the policy requires us to, requests us to do for OPEB, so that's why it's in here.
Mhm.
The one-time costs, there was two others put in here, and I'll explain them. First one is the.
And I'm sorry, Chris, just to interrupt you. So your motion may actually include an amount once we get free cash certified to capital stabilization.
Sure, that's the only thing that might change it. That's a positive addition. It's not a.
And we don't know the exact amount of free cash that the state certifies until November 13th, correct?
We'll have it sometime after the warrant closes. I will know what Jennifer has filed. We just don't have the status. So
Okay,
it should be closer to the same, but sometimes the state can be,
okay,
picky on certain things.
okay. Okay.
And again,
Now,
we don't have to implement it all. If I get a number from Jennifer that she's pretty confident, I'm gonna talk to her the next couple of days. On Tuesday, I might say, here's the. It's never bad to have free cash in the spring, right? We don't spend all of it in the fall.
Yeah.
And I don't think there's anything else we need to allocate it on right away. I think putting it into capital statement is just a quick thing. Action.
Mhm.
The biggest spend is the $400,000 in the statements.
for that
The
school.
analysis.
Yeah. And so now we're on Article 4, and I believe, Ms. Martin, you had a question about one.
Yeah, I want to add, I want
Yeah.
to talk about, so,
Okay.
the opioid settlement funds, is as I described, this is the one that's come in and put an article to spend. The cemetery plot sales, that's the cemetery software. So, the next two fund, one that has to be done for sure, and one that will have to be done if Beechwood Playground isn't approved. So, the ADA accessibility for Sturdy Street is gonna be these rubber mats, we're not gonna lay down a whole rubberized surface. And the other, that other one, so that would be for sure. The other one is on here simply because I don't know, I expect to, but you don't know. And if it does, that can be stricken, or it can be approved and it just won't be done, and we'll just in the spring revert it back. Reallocated. So it's not, it's just, that's a belt and suspenders. Because we have to, if the Beechwood Playground is gonna have a port in place surface, but if this isn't approved, if that's not approved, we have to. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
And so that would, for example, be in your manager's motion that this 45,000 in free cash would be not allocated if the CPC recommendation is passed.
Yes. That's.
Okay.
I don't think it wouldn't be necessary.
Okay. So now we're at Article 5.
And that's the CPC, these are the updated recommendations. Again, I don't, we have to have a bond, I've already talked to council about drafting. There has to be bond language now in this, which we don't.
Yeah, I was gonna. Did CPC bond the entire 2 million or? Okay,
Because I want to keep money in a reserve
okay,
to help for next year.
okay.
But these are the numbers updated, it's historical preservation is 8,000. The money for the Western Housing Authority, there's 87,878. Affordable housing units at Mount Pleasant is 1.3 million, and open space and recreation, speech with the sports wall and the tennis courts. Are 2 million, and that will be one.
And Chris, the language from council, do we expect that we're gonna get it soon for advisory, just because I know they need to vote and then we need to vote after they vote?
Yeah, so they're gonna have this for.
Okay,
So,
okay.
actually, one change here, so the source of funds for project 3 is actually undesignated. There's an account that's called undesignated, that's not affordable housing, they don't have that much money.
Okay.
And they did vote it out. Well, we talked through it last night, and that's what their intent is. So
And so the motion for Article 5, number 3 will be contingent upon passage of Article 5.
You mean,
Article 6.
Oh, Article 6, yeah,
Yes.
sorry.
Yes.
Or whatever
We-
all
we-
the
we
new
used that
numbers
kind of
are.
language last time, so we can just-
Okay,
That's the only thing that's tied to something. else.
And we're gonna put that into the article, right?
you mean
into
4
the
and 3?
motion.
Chris,
Number
right?
3, yeah. The
5 and
CPC
4, I mean, I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
yeah. 4 is independent, I'm sorry.
4 is independent, but the 1.3 million is contingent on the
Yes,
passage.
that would have to be in the. That's-
Well, would
In
it
fact, I
be,
can actually, I could put that in the informational summary, that's gonna be clear.
yeah, just to explain to people.
Yeah.
who-
By the way, if there are. If there are things that you think need to be in this warrant, because we don't, these are, the warrant's fairly bare bones most of the time. If there's materials you think need to be in this one, tell me now, in the next week, so we can get it together. If there's any kind of, I don't think we want to put all the 1 pages there, we could if you thought that was necessary. But if there's other language, I can draft that stuff or have it drafted. We don't have a lot of information, so we could, I think that the big 4 articles probably need more material. We can reference, the town website and a bunch of other things, but there might be things that you want to include in here, we can. If you want.
I'm imagining the 1 pagers will be available on the same table as people are walking in.
We can have anything available coming in that we want.
We can or
You
cannot.
can.
Oh, okay. Well, in terms of bulking up the warrant, that, I think. I'm just thinking about what somebody's gonna be more likely to read if they're looking for more information about town hall or police and fire. If
Well, this is gonna go everybody's house. It's gonna go, everyone gets this. So you think it'd be helpful in here, just tell me. I'm
reluctant to say up until the last few years how often I read the warrant when it landed in my mailbox. But I think the colorful 1 pagers to make sure those are available on the tables when people are walking to the gym is a great idea. If we want to put more on the warrant,
great, but. Like if the select board wanted a statement, it's a little, not just your vote, but more of a statement, we haven't historically done that, other communities have lengthy paragraphs. West is not historically done. But if you wanted to have something. You could, I mean, there's not a lot of time to do it.
Yeah, I think maybe a quick paragraph for each of the big infrastructure items.
This is a big one, so, yes.
And I think for each, we could say at the end, we shouldn't put the URL because it's not gonna be linked in when we get it in hard copy, although it will be linked
It will be
online.
on the website.
Yeah, maybe if we could do the PDF with the link in it to please go to the town website for more information, hyperlink here for like the one pagers and all of that, so that way we don't have to cram everything in the back, but
Yeah, we can actually, a QR code is from,
While you're there.
yeah, we can put a QR code.
they can put the QR code in the warrant, yeah. How do people feel about that?
Yes.
It's a good idea.
I think Hinghamstown warrant was 113 pages. We want to go there.
No, but I think, I can even, I don't normally put this, but usually I put a couple pages and just explain what's in here.
Yeah.
I can also do that with the QR code, just to have information, so people know how to read this stuff. This, again, it's printed, QR code.
Yeah, so I would suggest we want a summary paragraph and maybe we'll see if Judge Cutler can work with the zoning bylaw working group on quick explanation. I mean, she's already done some of that, although I'm not sure if she's around. But for the select board, I'm gonna suggest, I feel like this is a menu CPC. And then all of the infrastructure projects down to the school feasibility study, through the school feasibility study, and then just do like a paragraph on those and we can look through it as we go. Okay, that sounds great. So,
Showing support.
yeah, but information too,
Yeah.
information. So, Chris, maybe just to accelerate this, articles 6 through 9. These are the purchase of the buildings and the stabilization funds. Are these? It appears to be boilerplate language that council requires for these purchases of properties and to implement funds.
We just have to have bond council double check articles. 5, 6, and 7, because they're bonds and.
Okay,
That we have.
and do we think we're gonna have that ready for advisory tomorrow?
That I don't know, but it'll be technical language, so it won't be as.
Okay.
They've adopted language before, so we can, as long as the spirit maintains.
Okay.
It's not like we're gonna change
Yeah,
one pleasant to like 40,
Yeah.
Three
Yeah.
fish.
and so here. So here for town hall and police and fire, as we see, I think this is where the informational summary is gonna be very important to identify the amount.
Yes,
And then the amount of the anticipated tax increase for the median household. Because when you look at it, it doesn't have that number in there.
Are you talking about
I mean, it's-
6 and 7?
Yeah,
the only reason we can put it up there, my only concern is that if it tweets, I don't think it will. The numbers are pretty much locked, but.
Yeah.
Because with the ballot, I'm gonna show you the next one, just a second. Actually, one totally different.
Wouldn't we want to add that to 8 and 9 too?
I could put,
8, 9's in there.
I can put 10 into the town hall and 10.4, I think is the number. Was it fire? Like, we could do that. I mean, that's the number.
Do you want to lock ourselves in with those numbers? I mean, no?
Because I mean, that the motion will line at that meeting. I don't think
I
anything's gonna
put
change.
them in the informational summary.
Okay, that's fine.
I wouldn't put them in the article.
Okay. They have to be in for 8, 9, because the ask is
Right.
for.
Yeah, it's for the
Right.
specific kind amount. Okay,
And then 400,000, because that's, I think that's.
That's how you
Task, but see, if that's not gonna change it, the school feasibility study, that number pretty much. 400,000,
Yes.
Then it should be in there.
So I just have a question, and I apologize for circling back to this. School environmental and site testing analysis. The title came into being because of concerns about feasibility study. one, it's a mouthful to say, and two, I'm just wondering if it's gonna,
Future condition study? Future options study, future site study? Future school study?
What we really want.
Because it's really not a full feasibility.
Well, you know, there's something to be said for a complicated. Topic, or whatever you call it, in that. We don't want people to jump to this as, aha, they're trying to sneak into school. And there are people who think that's gonna be happening. So that's the only reason for changing that language.
okay, I'm fine,
But
leave it, I'm fine.
it might be confusing too, though. Maybe, how about school environmental and site analysis? Maybe take the testing out.
That's fine.
Does that make it any better?
What about just school and environmental testing? Something, no,
Lots of times you get tested for like lead or something like that.
well, all right, school environmental and site, school environmental, or environmental site testing, you know, environments, you know.
We can just leave it,
Or just leave it.
and we'll just
Yeah.
leave it.
You could take out the and. The site encompasses the interior and the exterior.
Yeah, if we just take the and out, and it's a very
So
simple,
it'd be about as
of
much
course
site
we
as
want to
you
find that.
Guys, or just leave it alone.
Just leave it. Sorry, I brought it up.
Ellen,
I couldn't, I can't, sometimes at this hour, I can't spit the words out.
you're really gonna stand in the corner.
Yeah. Okay, I think we've,
Motion to achieve.
Chris, anything you want to add? Okay. All right. Now we're getting to a necessary.
Look, this, you have to adopt it.
We're gonna have to announce this.
Updated.
I'm sorry, oh, thanks so much.
This is what the election wants to look like. Um, 4 questions, these are all drafted. There will be no number in here for town hall and police station because financing won't be determined until later, so that you don't know what the bond is. So the education will have to come in, you know, to people as to what that is. You can't put a number because we don't know exactly. That said, people going in have to understand that, but they're kind of, what is this, right? So that there's gonna be an education piece. So people know this is not some kind
Yep.
of big switch, it's what the,
Yep.
it's been approved at town meeting is what it
Yep.
is. So,
But in the language here, I don't see a link to what was approved in town meeting, or is that an agreement?
sorry,
I'm looking for, so to the person who comes to me and says. We approved it at town meeting, but what is this?
this is the funding.
I understand that. But I'm saying for a voter walking into town hall, trying to understand if this is necessarily linked to what was voted on at a town meeting. Is there language here that creates that link?
So I think, are you saying like, let's say someone wants to do early voting and they're like trying to figure out,
No. I'm saying when someone's standing there.
Yep.
At town hall with a black pen in their hand and looking at this, wondering if this is the same thing they just voted on at town meeting.
oh, yeah,
Can there be language in here that links you back to the warrant articles? Yeah, so people understand.
As voted upon at town meeting on date.
But the problem is you don't know that it was voted on. That's the other thing, so. It could have been voted on, but it may have been rejected, and if it was rejected, the ballot question is now wrong. Right,
But then it still would have been voted on.
yes, I had to talk to council, I didn't draft these, and I.
As voted on and approved by town meeting.
Whatever
know if it's
council
gonna
would
be approved.
recommend, so
I
that
will
if,
ask,
if somebody challenges that, someone can point to, see, this is the same thing.
I think I talked to Cal about these years, I think it'd be helpful.
yeah, I think that would be helpful,
It is.
because I think the challenge maybe is we have to get this on the election ballot without knowing the outcomes, right? And so one of these could fall off if it doesn't get voted on. And it just might be confusing, but it might be a moot point, because let's say someone votes on it, well, if town meeting doesn't pass it, then
Doesn't matter.
it doesn't matter.
Could you just put it like after 1 Pleasant Street, Cohasset, Mass on line 3, in parentheses, Article 6,
I can
town
ask.
hall,
I can, I understand,
Well-
I understand the point. Let me ask.
yeah,
That would be a good.
Okay, I have to double check the voting hours. I think they're 8 to 6, but I don't remember, and I didn't check. So this is,
Definitely get that one.
yeah, they're,
yeah, the Baptist, I didn't, I don't remember what the locations are, but it's. This is not
So
done.
we,
You'll have a final, you'll have to sign these next.
we had.
But I just want you to have it.
Second vote to, that's all, that was all right.
That is, it's,
Okay, November 13th is our town meeting, November 18th is our town election.
correct.
To vote on the results of the. Okay. All right, it's 9:20.
I have one update that I want to share because it was good news. So we learned today. Town has won 2 coastal resilience grants, the coastal zone management program. One with the James Brook Watershed Coastal Flood Pathway Mitigation Design, that's the next phase of the study that has already happened. It's $227,000. And part of coastal flood resiliency improvements for the wastewater infrastructure, which is design plans to make the wastewater plant more flood resilient. That's 220,000. So these grants are just announced. We're the only community that won 2 of them, though. There are communities that want a lot of money to beach reform, $2 million, essentially, and a couple of things. But these are big. These are the next steps. These are going to take the study and actually start talking about concrete ways to improve the resiliency in those particular areas. And the James Brook watershed is everything in the Gulf, right? That's what they're talking. And the wastewater plant itself is in that same area, but it's special needs. So I want to let you know that that's Brian Joyce, Montana Castle, our resiliency planner. So, and we have word on 2 other grants pending, not the ADA, that's in the Senate. It's 2 other ones that I can tell you more about.
That's great, thank you, Chris. All right, we don't have any minutes, select board comments, Mr. Creighton.
Well, I really say that at 9:20 at night, my comments are. Ellen, you're.
He's very good.
I'm all set, thank you.
Mr. Blake?
I would like to express my gratitude to my fellow select board members for making this snappy. I am turning into a pumpkin.
That's why I have no comments. I already have.
Same here. All right, I'll entertain a
Motion
motion.
adjourned.
Second.
No topics anticipated. All those in favor, please vote aye.
Aye.
Aye.